Are we live?
I think we're live.
Oh, well. Good morning, everybody.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everyone. Wake up, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Woohoo.
We've only done this now like 100 times.
Jenny, you look so cool. I forgot my Mac. I got to go get my Mac.
Oh, that's okay. I found this radio, Mama Ruth, and I thought about you. So,
yeah,
we're going to do a whole show about Tejano music, and Dr. B may know this, but it's a mixture of country western music, polka music. You slide like country western dance with this. So, anyway, Alexa, stop. Anyway,
did you or Jenny ever went to Petite Flea Market in San Antonio, Texas on a Sunday afternoon?
Oh yeah. No, I've done all that. Yeah.
You see all these old fellows, like that's their entertainment, dancing around the dirt.
Yes. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I've been there too.
The Petite Flea Market.
That's right. That's right.
They do the strawberry festival there.
Yes.
You're being photobombed, Mother Ruth.
That's what she's doing to him during her school, probably, or his school. That's right. All right, everyone, welcome to Coffee and Pondusi. I'm Christian Cano. It's great to have you here Wednesday. Today is August 19th. I keep having to look at the date because it's all blurring since March. August 19th, this is our 96th show, I believe. We want to welcome those who are joining us on Facebook Live, but also those who join us on YouTube and many who join us on Facebook later on. So we are here at Casa de Cano. We're set up social distancing wise. This is the third attempt to try something unique because it looks like we're going to be like this for at least until next spring, probably. We'll hear Dr. B. And Jenny and I are actually sitting, we're talking directly into our Zoom, and we are actually 6 feet away from each other, exactly 6 feet away from each other. I've got air in the back blowing this way.
So she's sitting in my chair.
Not anymore. It's my chair now.
Right. Yeah, I'm either going to have to get a longer table if we get more people, because I don't know how you can get 6 feet away and have more people.
Oh, you need a...
Well, wait a minute. This is kind of confusing, okay, guys? Because, I'm about to be in school as well.
Yes.
So 6 feet, and I have to wear a mask or not wear a mask?
Well, Dr. V, you want to answer that?
I'd say it's your choice.
Yeah, well, when this all started out, they came up with this magic 6 foot notion, distance as being safe. And then obviously people have been kind of taking longer looks and trying to refine the science over these last several months. And so you'll see things on TV now that, 12 feet, 15 feet, the droplets will still kind of be there. So, there's no hard and fast rule. 6 feet, you're probably 95, 97% kind of safe. But why would it hurt to kind of wear a mask if you're still 6 feet? I mean, obviously, if you're talking to somebody across the room, 15, 20 feet, no worry. If I were doing an extended conversation with somebody at 6 feet distance, I would feel more comfortable having a mask on. So there's nothing absolute about any of these things. There's still new things being found out, kind of on a weekly basis. So.
Yes. So next week we'll have a plexiglass.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's kind of like the old saying, you wear belts and suspenders if you're going to be.
Maybe that shield. Maybe that shield.
Hey, why not? Absolutely. The more protection, the better. I think face shields are very good because there's evidence, that some people may get the infection through their eyes. So,
through the eyeballs.
You got your contacts on?
Yeah. Well, I don't think contact
I
is
have to
something.
have my glasses. Okay. Well, listen, wow, that's interesting. Okay, so welcome to Coffee and Pondusi. As we always do on Coffee and Pondusi, we're going to go around the Brady Bunch table or the Brady Bunch screen and introduce yourself and introduce your cause, and then we'll salute. That gives us time to share this. And if you're looking at the Brady Bunch screen, I believe it is Baby Trump Pinata. We'll skip him. And then there is Jenny, Dr. B, Stephen, and Mama Ruth. Is that right? Okay, so let's go. Yes.
That would be me.
Yes, go ahead.
Good morning. I don't know. You maybe slept too long last night.
I did.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Jenny-Jaymes Gunn. I the coordinator with Charlotte Pride. Can you not hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, Ruth was tapping on her ear, so I didn't know if that was something. I'm watching the delay.
Yeah.
But anyway, I advocate with Charlotte Pride and I'm board member of the National Organization of Women. I also for Medicare for All. I even have my mask with me today.
All right.
And gun sense laws. I mean, Moms Demand Action. I definitely support that. So who's next? Order after me.
I think it was
Who's after me?
Dr. B.
Dr. B.
Yeah, that's what you said. I'm George Bohmfalk, a retired physician. My primary cause is Medicare for All, which I think would solve a lot of the problems we're dealing right now within the pandemic, as well as a lot of the racial inequities and disparities that we're facing now that have become so glaringly obvious in the pandemic.
I'm Stephen DiFiore. I'm a libertarian candidate for governor, longtime activist in North Carolina and Mecklenburg County. I want to reform our state certificate of need laws, which are laws in place that restrict access to health care because different hospital organizations have to have territorial monopolies that are protected by the government. I don't think that's right.
Okay.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Ruth Perez. I'm a community advocate here in North Carolina. And I just finished earlier a board meeting at the Charlotte Community Health Clinic. Yes, I'm a Medicare for all. We need to have some Medicare for all, not private companies charging us extremely high prices for a doctor's appointment. And I do support, Black Lives Matter. I do support now where my good friend Jenny, our sexy model out there, it's part of, and I am glad to be here every single Wednesday.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mama Ruth. And so as we always do on Coffee and Pondusi, let's salute to our neighbors who would normally be sitting next to us. Salute to Coffee and Pondusi. Salute. And we have a whole bag of coffee mugs that Tara Long brought in, I think, April. And I need to get those out and we need to start using those because Tara went through the trouble of buying us these wonderful, gorgeous mugs. So
we got to talk about Manolos too.
Oh, yes, that's right. We want to thank our Pondusi sponsor. I have to turn. You have one too, I think.
Yes.
Manolo's Bakery. I took a chunk.
Yeah,
Manolo's Bakery. Located on Central Avenue, immigrant owned. Everything is made from immigrant hands. Tamales. Actually, I'm not sure if they're making tamales right now because of COVID, but they do have everything else you would normally need. Tres leche, but please support them.
Yeah, I just went and got tamales there.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah, I think you have to put the
They are
order in.
delicious.
Yes, they are. And they're non-fattening, I believe. So if you see me turning like this, we're experimenting with if you look in your Brady Bunch screen, your Zoom screen, there's a little picture of there. And that's what we would normally look like if during new regular. So I tried to get us back to that. But as we learned last week, the sounding and everything else, we're trying to get this. But this is why this is so interesting. Who's been watching the DNC convention? All right. They have done some incredible work with their production and their camera work and their Zooms and everything. And you're noticing a lot of elected officials and politicians that are having Zoom meetings like this that have been doing some really creative things. And we've come a long way since we first started this in the end of March. And I have seen other elected officials who actually watch this show, who are using our technology and using what we're doing. And as a result of that, Jenny has been we've been helping other organizations produce their shows as well, from AIDS to now as well. And so we want to try as many things as we can. And unlike other people, we share all the information that we learn because we want people to be able to communicate as best with each other during this COVID-19 situation. So today's topic is COVID. Well, I hate to say this because after I named the topic, it was, are COVID idiot parents giving their children long hauler symptoms. So we're going to try to explain what long haulers means, because I didn't know what it meant until Monday night, admittedly, when I was watching Chris Como, who's recovering or had COVID-19, and he had a doctor on from England who's doing research on long hauler symptoms. I believe that's what it's called. And so we're going to go to our professional physician and brain surgeon. I have to keep reminding people he's a brain surgeon. And our, can you explain to us, Dr. B, what long haulers symptoms, is that right? What that is and what it means?
Yeah, this is not a special area of brain surgery, but I think any physician would have the same general common sense of knowledge about what they're talking about. There are a lot of illnesses like the common cold, where you kind of get it and you get over it, you're done with it, or you have a gallbladder operation or something like that. So those would be short hauler syndromes. You get sick and you're done with it. This long hauler means that you think you're over it, but then a few weeks later, you're still not kind of back to normal. Maybe one of the most famous or serious examples of a long hauler syndrome is something called the post-polio syndrome. And what they found is a lot of people that had polio back in the 50s and 60s, got to a certain degree of improvement or got over it completely, or they were stable with their weakness or paralysis longstanding. And then 20, 30 years later, they suddenly got a whole lot worse. And that's called the post-polio syndrome. It's still not terribly well understood, but it is understood as a very real phenomenon of the illness, the viral illness of polio. So what we're discovering with COVID is that there's a whole lot of people, and I don't think we have a number yet on whether it's 1% or 5% or 20% that have this acute illness like Chris Cuomo did. They're sick as dogs. And then they get over it and everything's wonderful. But then they find out, gosh, I still can't get up the stairs without getting short of breath, or I still have this cough that's kind of going on, or I'm just kind of weak in general. So that's kind of what the long hauler means. That doesn't affect everyone, but it is a substantial percentage of the people with the illness that it just sticks with them. And what we don't know is whether that's going to go away in another 6 months, or if these people are stuck with a certain degree of permanent effects of this, for the rest of their lives. So that, in a nutshell, that's kind of what this long hauler type thing means.
I got a quick question. So I remember reading something about NBA players who got COVID, because that kind of swept through the NBA for a while. And these are, guys that are at the top of their game athletic-wise. And, they would get sick and they wouldn't, they would get over it. But then they always felt that their endurance afterwards was diminished or suffered. And they, if I remember correctly, they had something called broken glass opacity. So when you do a chest X-ray, the lungs kind of look like they're lit up due to some scarring of the alveoli or brachial passages and stuff like that. Is that the kind of long hauler damage or symptoms that you're talking about? Or are we talking about something where it's like reoccurring? So like a cold sore or something where you don't have it for a while and then it comes back.
Yeah, I think at this point it's a little bit unclear. I mean, there's a lot unclear at this point about the COVID in there, so it might either be something that stays with you or something that goes away and then comes back. I mean, we're just going to have to see how things shake out. With the chest X-ray appearance that you mentioned in the athletes, this is one of those little medical kind of things. We distinguish in the medical field between symptoms and signs. So symptoms is something that you feel. You tell a doctor how you feel. That's a symptom. A sign would be something like, a change on a EKG or a change on an X-ray. And so this ground glass appearance, that certainly might be very worrisome for the long-term pulmonary function of these folks that have that. If it's just something that's seen on an X-ray that doesn't yet correlate with a physical sign, a physical or symptom, a physical manifestation, then that would just be, kind of a finding. And we have to assess the significance of it over a longer period of time. There's going to be all sorts of things like that. It looks like, and time will tell kind of what falls into patterns of predictable importance. Yeah.
Well, one of the reasons we wanted to explain long haulers first, so we could kind of get some context on what we're going to talk about, because we're going to go into schools. But before we do that, I know Jenny did some research. She's like our resident research producer kind of person. So anybody wants dirt on anybody, go to Jenny. She can pull up stuff.
Oh, I already have the dirt on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the show, just so you know.
It's a good thing I keep my nose clean.
Exactly. We'll just say it wasn't me. It wasn't. All right, Jenny, tell us what you know.
Not gonna do it.
That's right.
1,000 points of life.
Words are hard.
Words are hard, and the math is harder.
Yeah.
But anyway, from the stats that they're getting, primarily from like China and Italy, because they've had it so much longer than we have, and they had so many. Why does it keep asking me to unmute?
You're good. You're good.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
Okay. But basically, about 18 to 19 of these out of 100 patients end up with cardiac problems, arterial problems. About the same number end up with some type of lung scarring or lung damage that doesn't just go away after they're done with COVID. About 2 out of 100 end up with very bizarre neurological effects, numbness in their body, nerve damage, ability not to be able to perform the way they were, similar to what the NBA was talking about. So a lot of different things that are showing up in adults, and of course the kids are showing up even more bizarre things. But a lot of 20 and 30 somethings are having heart attacks and strokes because of this. So they're and I guess how that segues into these young adults going off to college is that as they're going off, if they get it, even if they get a light case or even a non-hospitalization case, they're still getting those after effects. As Dr. B said, we don't know how long they're going to last. We don't know if this neurological stuff's going to come back. But exposing people, it's not like chicken pox where you have the logic you're going to expose a bunch of 5-year-olds and you can get over it and it's going to be all fine. The herd immunity is that you just don't want this because we don't know what the long haul ramifications are. But what we're seeing is that these effects, once they set in, they're not going away anytime soon. And so that's a big issue.
And that's what Jenny and I were talking about before, because now we're going to start talking about kids, is what Chris Cano was talking about is anybody who watches CNN, which I do, I try to watch all of them, but I like CNN. And he was talking about that he had it, he had a very mild case of it, but he still has symptoms, I guess, or what you said.
Symptoms, right.
He experiences shortness of breath. He experiences a lot of things, and he works out all the time, or used to work out all the time. And he has talked to runners and athletes that are still feeling things, and that was so. As he was talking, a link popped up from the Charlotte Observer on my phone, and it said UNC has canceled in-person classes, starts today, I believe, sometime around. And then right after that, Notre Dame has canceled classes. An elementary school in Lincoln County is now going to go all virtual. All these things started coming in, and we had this conversation almost less than a month ago. We were talking about children in school and going back to school, and for those who remember, and the topic was, I think, are Mijas and Mijos safe going back to school? And right after that, CMS voted to go virtual. Instead of Plan B, they went to Plan C. There are still schools in Union County and obviously Lincoln County. There are some colleges that made the decision to go for a while. And of course, Jenny and I said, what could happen? And not to be facetious, but that was, and now we know what is happening. So
nothing bad can happen putting a bunch of 18 to 25-year-olds back together again after being gone for months. I mean, that's such a, it sounds like it's going to be so benign and so controllable. I mean, who would think? And we're seeing this with high schools too. I mean, these really crowded, super large high schools where people they're opening up these high schools in these different states, and they're shutting down within a week.
Yeah.
You know, most of the time because they're getting these COVID clusters and these flare-ups. UNC got a big flare-up. I mean, like really, really big in Chapel Hill.
So I guess the question is, now we know what long haulers is, or that situation. I wish we had leadership from the top, from president, and even quite honestly, we have to say here in North Carolina, we've done an incredible job in North Carolina compared to other states as far as trying to keep things under control. Mecklenburg County, our Commissioner Jarrell sent an email out, plus other commissioners, that our infection rate, I believe, has gone down slightly here in Mecklenburg County. So that has been working. But at the same time, I don't think a lot of people understand, because there is this belief from younger people, from the misinformation that has been shared, is that even if you get it, it's so mild, don't worry about it. The offset of getting it, it's so mild, don't worry about it. We don't know what the long-term, long-haul effects are. And so were parents accidentally or naively putting their kids in a situation that's going to make their life, a health situation, maybe even more dangerous in the future. So who wants to comment on that? Because that is what our concern is now.
Well, let's not go that far. I mean, we had Rachel in our show, one of our first ones, and even though she went through the phase of quarantine and all that, something worse came up, and it developed into a higher risk for her health. My best friend, she's in CMS, one of the school directors, and she went through it. She was fine. 3 weeks later, after a month, she developed a real bad pneumonia, lung infection, and now she's under a treatment. So it's not like it's gonna go away right away. It can develop other things. So I'm very concerned.
Dr. B.
Yeah, look, it's so kind of interesting and sad and partially catastrophic that we have these experiments going on all around the world. We've talked before about the Swedish experience, kind of where they decided they were going to stay open up and just protect the old people because they wanted to preserve their economy. And the outcome of that experiment is that many more people died per capita, per 100,000 in Sweden than a lot of other countries, and their economy tanked just about as hard. So it's like, well, that didn't work. Well, so now we have the openings up of different states, and as each state has opened up more, we have these little mini hotspots, don't we? So that's not working. Now we've had going back to schools and the colleges. I think it's pretty clear a large component of their failure has been these massive parties and gatherings that we're seeing on the news every night. College kids just can't keep from getting together and becoming these little super spreader events. So I guess the next experiment that we need to watch is the New York State schools, because New York State has reduced their daily incidence to below 1%, positive cases or something like that. And so, I mean, it's like an example around the world of how an area has successfully suppressed the illness so that they feel like they're going to give a try at going back to school. If New York can go back to school with the safety measures and whatnot successfully, that'll be a great lesson. If they fail, then I would say give up. For the rest of the world, we just can't congregate, and there can be no large-scale church, public sporting events, political events. It's just not going to happen. So I think kind of the last hope of the world for any ability to get back together once you get your rate down, which probably nobody besides New York has done, is going to be their experiment with the schools. So we'll know in a month. But I think that's kind of the one to watch.
So let's hear from the libertarian, because I don't know, Stephen, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. And we did the promotion, and we already did the show promo. So you have to, you agreed with everything I said in the show. So that's the promo.
Of course, I always agree with you in everything you say. So here, I'm going to bring up something that's kind of tangential related but not related. So we have the situation where a lot of folks and even the school district don't feel like sending their kids to in-person schooling is the best option for them. That's fine. So what are the options that are left open to parents? Like, what do you got? Virtual schooling, online schooling. Well, what happens if you don't really have a good internet connection? What if you don't have affordable internet connection? What if you're stuck with only 5 megabits down, effectively a slow DSL? And what causes that sort of situation to exist in the largest city in North Carolina? Because we live in Mecklenburg County. We live in Charlotte, the largest city in the state, the most infrastructure heavy city in the state. Why is that the case? I remember a couple of years ago when, Google said they wanted to start having Google Fiber come into Charlotte. And I don't know about you, but I was really excited about that. I thought, oh man, I want my Google Fiber. I want a gigabit down. And at every single juncture of the project, the pre-existing ISPs, at the time Time Warner, now Spectrum, sued and had lawsuit after lawsuit, injunction after injunction, preventing Google from essentially bringing in high-speed internet into the various neighborhoods of Charlotte, because the way ISP is an internet service provider, the way that works in places like North Carolina is the government gives a territorial monopoly to a private company and says only you have permission to operate in this area. And these private companies, they divvy up their area of control with each other because they know, for example, for like a guy like me, my choice for high-speed internet is Spectrum.
Yeah.
If I want slow internet that couldn't handle a Zoom call, I could go with AT&T. And a lot of people are in the same situation because competition is simply not allowed. And if we didn't have that situation, if we actually had the ability to buy and sell and, for products and companies to compete for high-speed internet, perhaps so many people wouldn't be in a situation where they have to try to figure out how to do virtual learning from home with slow internet.
Well, Stephen,
or no internet.
No, Stephen, what you said was a perfect, I think, an example. And if we were around the table, I think we'd all be like nodding our head, we agreed. But I think what you said is a perfect example of why we're in this cluster F that we are, is because we have such little leadership at the top nationally and some at some states that the problem is, how do we save lives or how do we protect people from that? That's really the goal, right? Because we don't have a person who has said that is the goal, all of these other things are the problem. And so you have people like you have people who are neighbors of color who maybe they use school as babysitting services, or not just neighbors of color, just people who that's just what they use public schools as what's going to happen with my kids.
Say the working poor.
Yeah, the working poor, that's right.
People
Yeah, the whole point when Jimmy Carter signed the Department of Education into law back in the 70s was so that Americans, working families, wouldn't have to, worry about providing the education for their own children, right? The government would do that for them. And since the 70s, the government has failed at that. So why are we going to be happy with the situation where we, the people, don't have choices about what we want to do? Because we already know, for example, like if I want to send something and have it get to where it wants to go, I want to send it UPS or FedEx, because USPS rather, the Postal Service, I don't trust them. And that's government run.
Well, I do, but I'm just going to say something, and then I know Jenny wants to jump in. And what I'm saying is that all of these side issues, we have those issues because there's no game plan for what the ultimate goal is. Give an example. The major banks here, their plan was to keep their employees safe during this COVID-19. And almost all the financial industry made a decision. We are not returning back to the office until April of 2021. They decided that 2 weeks ago officially. So what they did, that's the goal. So then what they did is everything else was designed. How do we get people to work at home, send them hotspots, send them computers, do this. All of that other stuff was done. Had we had a president that said, this is my argument.
Or a governor.
Our governor, yeah, that's right. The goal is to protect the individuals, the kids in school. That's the goal. And then we could have worked around everything else like you're talking about, pull back on those, what you said, allow anybody to come in and give, maybe that law is not good for us at this time. Let's bring Google, let's do these kind of things as you're talking about. Let's break these monopolies during this pandemic type of situation. And so it seems like that all of these things that we're talking about are after effects because we don't have any goal. Jenny.
Well, I think one of the issues is it's not just competition, but it's also we have this herky jerky policy or this federal where you know, for example, Trump completely abandoned the Obama emergency response to pandemics. You know, and the Obama administration spent 8 years evaluating that and wrote a handbook. And as soon as Trump took over, it's like, well, we're not going to use something like that because Obama's team wrote it. And you know, there's a lot of politicization of just normal things like infrastructure, like high-speed internet, things that should be looked at, should have been fixed a long time ago, but we have not invested in infrastructure for so long because of politics, because of this burning desire to be on one side or the other, that important utilities have been ignored. And that's why the Medicare for All is getting traction. It is why we're debating high-speed internet when we shouldn't be debating it. It should have been taken care of a long time ago. These are like no-brainers. It's just like back in the 1920s and 30s when we electrified America with the REA. We should be past all this, but we're not.
But don't you think, Jenny, as I look this way, but you're sitting right there, don't you think, Jenny, that we have to remind America, because we have a very short-term memory. It's both good and it's bad. It's good because we get over things better than other countries do. They hold grudges centuries. It's bad because we forget what happened just 2 months ago. Betsy DeVos and Donald Trump were pushing in-person schools. We have to have in-person schools. We have to have in-person schools. They were pushing it so hard that some of these counties like Lincoln County, Union County, they gave into that kind of political pressure and they went with Plan B instead of Plan C. It wasn't until after, we haven't heard from Betsy DeVos in a month. Has anyone heard?
Wouldn't it be great if there wasn't a Department of Education for Betsy DeVos to be the head of, to force our local school districts to do things maybe they didn't want to do?
Yeah, no. I in this situation, Stephen, I agree with you. I think there's some value to the Department of Education at the national level. But in this situation, you're right. When you have a president like this, I wish we didn't have a Department of Education because they screwed things up. Because I do think if they had not pushed it, the mama bears in the local schools, regardless if they were Trump supporters or Republicans or whatever, their main goal is to protect their kids from going to school. 86% of Americans with kids in school did not want in-person learning or wanted kids to be delayed going to school. And so I do think that made this whole thing kind of discombobulated. But let's talk to a mama bear. Mama Ruth, tell us your friends or so forth, are any of them in-person class or right now?
Actually, my son had to go for personal class today. Today was his day. I am worried. I am kind of, not for him and not for us, but for others. And also, I'm afraid that my mother might have to go through the second round if he catches something up there. Apparently, it's not going to be for a long time. I'm hoping he gets out before noon. But I am very concerned about it. I have not heard anything in the elementary yet this week. School just started. But it really terrified me the way colleges are taking real severe measures right now. They're closing down. UNCC is not having in-person classes anymore like before. So that kind of rings a bell for us to do something. I mean, what's the purpose of Governor Cooper keeping us into an extra 5 more weeks of, quarantine, not opening gyms and not opening other things, but yet doesn't care for the safety of our kids.
Well, I agree. And what we have been saying, and I don't even know why I know we're having this conversation because it makes a good show, but if we were all sitting around behind having a beer like as neighbors and talking and so forth, wouldn't this be like a no-brainer? We would say, let's just wait until it's safe to go back to school. Let's just wait. Or as Jenny had said, what's the rush? I mean, what is the rush to go back to school? Let's maybe wait until spring of next year. What the only people that I saw that were trying to rush it were people who wanted their kids to be babysitted, kids who wanted to play sports. I want to make sure I get that sport in so I can get that college scholarship. Everything's been delayed. Regardless if they played or not, the college is not going to offer them a scholarship. Everything's delayed because they're not even playing. So if there's a backlog of athletes that are going up. And maybe people like Steven said, who maybe don't have really good internet. What is the rush to put people in danger? That was what my question is. I mean, I would be turning to each other going,
and you know what? It's not about, like I heard Steve, it's not only about internet. It's about, some people might have internet, they might have a computer, but their computer might be just liable for doing their work. It's not updated into speaker, into cameras, into some special programs. I've learned this morning, not all kids are having the equality or the equal opportunity to learn in class. My kindergarten, if I wouldn't be around, his mama is working, his dad is working. If I wouldn't be around, who's gonna be logging them in? Who's gonna be telling them what to press on what? They're not pro on computers. I mean, this is not only about going to school, it's about educational.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. This is where
and even while the schools are shut down, everyone still has to pay their property taxes to the schools for education while they're not getting the quality education they want, because we don't really have a system in this state where education follows the child. So schools, for example, they get a lump sum based upon how many students they have. But if we're going to have a situation where students are not going to be going to those buildings anymore, you would think the overhead costs would go down. So maybe some of that money can go back to the families per child so they can choose the options that they want. Like, I don't know, buy a computer with an integrated speaker or integrated camera, or be able to afford a higher quality internet, even though, it's not the best situation. If you have more money freed up, why don't you do that? And, we can go from either public schools now, we can jump to the colleges. Everyone knows that colleges are overpriced anyway. If you're going to be having to take your college classes online, do you think you're going to be getting a discount on that? Because everyone's hurting a little bit. Or do we still have to pay the same outrageous pricing for essentially a bunch of webinars that have almost no overhead costs associated with it anyway? I'd be curious to see how that's going to shake out.
Stephen, what you said was exactly correct. And I think most people could agree with that part of your libertarian belief is we spent what was the last package? It was $3 trillion. Is that right? Somewhere around that?
It was $1 trillion to the top 500 richest companies in the country, in the world, and we just got breadcrumbs.
Exactly. Can you
1,200 Trump bucks.
And that was our money. It was our
that we got
money
back.
Can you imagine if we had just spent $1 billion, I don't know, providing computers and hotspots and technology for all the kids?
What I don't understand is these, and I don't know the technical aspects of it, but basically these different little Google iPads and Apple iPads and all these tablets and stuff like that, because I have an iPad. And it has its own internet capability. It has 5G speed. Why we aren't checking those out, why we aren't buying those in bulk and distributing those just like textbooks,
I think they are.
Well, and I don't know that. I mean, because if they are, then this debate's a moot. That we don't need to do high-speed internet all over the place if they have their own capability, their own economy. But I don't understand. We have the technology now to where we don't need to build a bunch of long wired out systems. We have these virtual deals. I mean, I'm broadcasting on one right now, and I'm going off my own signal with my my phone. And
you look marvelous, by the way. I just thought I'd share that with you.
But it's got 5G speed, and so we literally don't need all this infrastructure necessarily. And the same with these colleges is they can. I know a lot of colleges, the moment you enroll in, you get some type of device.
Yes.
Because like West Texas A&M in Amarillo, Texas, or in Canyon, Texas.
A lot of those online schools, right? They send you a tablet and a device.
They've been doing a lot of online classes for years out there, and so, but to Stephen's point about the school districts are going to have to retool their buildings, because when or if we can go into into real-time school, they're going to have to adjust how we do business.
Yeah.
So some of this money is going to have to be spent on the buildings themselves, getting them up to code, getting modernization, doing a modernization of buildings. And this is stuff that again, I've said we've deferred the equity of our country for decades. We have not spent the money we needed to, because we're spending it on war. And we need to decide what kind of society we're going to have.
So here's a question. Now, I'm going to sound like a Republican, or maybe even a libertarian, and everyone can answer this within 30 seconds.
I won't hold it against you.
I will.
It is obvious that there are some government entities that have been able to handle this situation around the country, whether the school districts, that they have been able to come up with. And there's also some that may be so big with bureaucrats that it's a cluster. For an example, I believe CMS may be one of those. They sent out emergency messages Monday night to former students who graduated, trying to get back their Chromebooks and their hotspots. So they waited until the school year started to try to get all these hotspots, because there were parents saying our hotspot, we can't get a hotspot. So they're like, oh, we got to order more, but until we get more, let's get those back. Now, someone logically would have said, let's get them back when they graduate. That would make sense. So in a situation like CMS, who may not have the skill set at the management level to handle this situation, this may be a good time to bring in the private sector and go to Bank of America, go to Wells Fargo and say, who helped you get all of your thousands and thousands of employees working from home? Can you help us for a week and give us some ideas of what we can do to? And so maybe this is a time where the privates, the government, we are the government, should ask for help from the private sector to straighten things out a little bit, because we seem to be a little bit over our head in certain. I don't always believe in privatizing situations, but I do believe that they can be good consultants, because Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the company that our family is fortunate to be funded under, they did all this in 2 weeks. 36,000 employees.
But that's not
Well, I got good news for you, Christian. There is a system in place in North Carolina with regards to schools to help with that. It's called the Opportunity Scholarship. It's the North Carolina's charter school system. If you're not familiar, briefly, what the charter school system is in North Carolina is you have public schools where you have the public school grants for a school district. You have opportunity scholarships that go to parents and families who might not otherwise be able to afford to send their kid to those schools. And then the actual day-to-day operation and management of that school, instead of being in the hands of, say, the local school district, or subject to the whims and the rules of the elected officials in that particular school district who may not be up to the job, the management is actually essentially hired out on a contract basis to a company that specializes in that. And typically you get pretty good quality operations, and they're very, very popular. Every time the opportunity scholarships go out to be purchased, they get eaten up almost immediately. So there's a big demand for that kind of service in North Carolina. I think we should have more of it.
Yeah, I'm going to put my Democratic hat on. I'm not a big fan of charter schools or vouchers or things like that. And the reason I'm not is because what we have now is like 4 school systems who are half-assed school systems. You have charter schools, vouchers, public schools. I think it's maybe 5 schools, the option word that people like to use. You have 5 crappy options instead of 1 really good option. And if we could just pull that money back into public education and make public education better instead of tearing it down and make it worse. Because what we find is, and what the research is showing, is the charter schools aren't accountable to the same standards. They can hire their brother-in-law as the vice president, the vice principal, their sister is and they don't have to have certificates as well.
That's not true in North Carolina. I mean, maybe in other states, absolutely. Like I think it was Virginia had all kinds of problems with their charter school system, but that's not really a thing in North Carolina.
Well then, but I do know the charter schools in North Carolina are not under the same standards as a public education system. They have a completely different infrastructure. But not to mention, as an LGBT person, I cringe anytime my taxpayer dollars could possibly go to a religious school from a voucher or a charter that could to say that I need to die. So to me,
but we're not talking about parochial schools. We're talking about the public charters, which are a public school.
Yes, vouchers. There are religious charter schools in North Carolina, and there are
religious private schools in North Carolina.
Okay, well, we can have a conversation on that one, but I guess.
But I'm not talking about them. Like that's not what we're talking about. The public education system here, right? And we want to have ways. And you described essentially what is a public-private partnership earlier, right? As a means to provide better education to the people of North Carolina. Now, currently, the charter school system we have is kind of like that, but I mean, it's not perfect, right? So perhaps there's room for reform to improve it, to make it better, to give more choices and opportunities to people who are looking for something.
No, I guess what I was saying is, in this situation, I think we need to reach out to the private sector that have been successful in handling their employees not coming into work, like Bank of America, Wells Fargo, the financial industries.
But what I was going to say before y'all jump in, is kind of got cut off there, but Wells Fargo and Bank of America have been making those moves for a long time. They didn't do it in just 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right.
So they've been years of working for remote, and a lot of Fortune 500 companies have been doing that. That's why you saw a lot of these WeWork places being set up. Is that big corporate centers are going the way of the dinosaur and the dodo bird, and businesses have evolved from that, and they've found that people working from home have a higher job satisfaction rate. Microsoft employs almost 2,000 people in the greater Charlotte area.
Yeah.
And almost 90% of them work from home. And the reason being is that they don't have to pay for an office building. They don't have to worry about office politics. They don't have to worry about, if they get sexually harassed at home, then it's their problem. I mean, there's a whole lot of advantage to doing remote office work and all and things like that. So schoolwork could be done that same way. Yeah. I think what COVID is forcing us to do is reevaluate how we spend our public money.
Yes.
And make it make sense, because we do have too many convoluted education systems. We do have, I think,
too many choices.
We don't not so much choice.
Okay.
We just we don't have some cohesive plans.
Stephen, you have to agree.
You can never have too many choices.
I agree with Stephen on that. I don't think the choice is the problem. I think what is happening is that we've abandoned the idea of having a cohesive infrastructure program. And when we spend this money, like we spent this $3 trillion on the CARES Act, we really didn't know where the money went.
Yeah. So here's a question, and this is a little lighthearted question in 30 seconds or less. And you don't really have to answer this one, because what Stephen said, I think, kind of is going to turn into a joke here. A joke that I want to say. I do believe you can have too many choices. If anyone has a puppy or a kid, you can give kids and puppies too many choices. You say, what I learned from my parents is, or my dad, I raised a single dad, and Mama Ruth, you can maybe chime in here. If you have a young kid, the last thing you want to do is say, pick any toy, or a puppy with 5 different toys. You want to just give them 2 options and say, you can pick this one or this one, because there are people whose mental ability is not mature enough to handle too many choices. It's a reality. It's like a kid. That's how that term, the kid in Candyland. It's like, oh my gosh. That's one of the reasons why when the colleges were going to occur in person, most of us were saying, what could happen? Anybody who remembers going off to college from having structure and discipline and then suddenly going to do what you want to do. No one is watching you except you. It was gonna happen. Kids are gonna go hug each other. That's just, it's a natural reaction. When I see Jenny after being a while, I instinctively want to hug her because that's just my human nature, but I have to go, oh, let me make sure that we're doing everything properly. So what can we at least agree, and I don't know, Stephen, you agree with this, that sometimes too many choices with certain age groups may not be good? Dr. B.
Yeah, it's not just age groups. I've recently learned that until not too long ago, like around the early 1900s, there were competing fire departments in large cities like New York, Chicago, places like that. So everybody would sign up with a fire department that gave them the best deal. They had lots of choice. But then what happened was the fire departments competed with each other, like they would hide the fire hydrants and so they could take the call, and they would have fights. Gangs of New York has a tremendous scene kind of where the competing fire departments end up fighting each other over who's going to put out the fire. And meanwhile, the fire burns the building down. So yeah, too much competition can definitely sometimes be a bad thing. It works sometimes, it doesn't work. I don't think in a lot of public services like fire departments, healthcare, and to a large degree, education.
Stephen, 30 seconds. What do you think? Can we agree a little bit?
Well, I'm never a fan of monopolies,
Yes,
whether it's private monopoly or government monopoly. Two choices is probably too few. You know, I'd like more than team red, team blue. So
Yep.
maybe three choices would be fine. That might be the good minimum number.
We agreed. All right. So
There we
here's
go. An olive
another,
branch.
yes. Here's another question. Those of us who do not have kids, I do not have children other than the two schnauzers. Those of us who don't have kids, we're not always involved in the decisions at the school level. Usually CMS and people say, we want the only people who have the life experience. If you don't have a parent, you can't be a school board member, or if you don't have a kid. If you don't have a kid in my local elementary school, you shouldn't have a say in what's going on. I think we have to involve everyone. I may not have a kid, but my goodness gracious, I have some common sense. I mean, some common sense will tell me that I do still have to pay taxes, as Stephen said, into that school. So I should have a say. I guess what I'm trying to say is CMS should involve other people in making these decisions that impact our community and not just parents with kids. Because I think what I have always said, we have some really crappy parents and they shouldn't be parents. And go ahead.
But, you know, but they do have open meetings. They do have.
Yes. But the first thing they ask you, because I've been to one of the neighborhood meetings, is where's your kid go to school? I don't have any kids.
Well,
and they all go,
yeah, but a lot of these decisions are made by the school board.
Yes.
So, when I'm talking about the school board, I mean, especially because they're elected officials, we can affect that the most.
Yes.
As a constituent, we can actually, be involved with that end of it, because there is a political aspect of the CMS schools. Yeah. From the fact that we do have elected officials making these overall decisions, like going to plan A, B, and C. That was made by the school board.
Yes.
And then it was changed by the school board when there was enough public outcry. So the political system in that case actually worked, where 19,000 CMS employees and a lot of concerned parents said, we're not really comfortable sending our kids back for just 2 weeks. There's no real benefit to it. And so some people will say, well, that politics affected it, but I think it affected it in a good way, where certain citizens got together and said, we're not comfortable, and it puts so much pressure on the school board. They made a change within about 10 days of making that first decision.
I think the reason I said that, and because we're winding down here, is because after we did our show, 3 weeks ago or however weeks ago, show 94, whatever it was, about schools and is our Mijo, I got a really nasty, which I do every week. I got a really nasty private message from someone saying, I don't know why you're putting your 2 cents into, you don't even have kids. And of course, my response, bless your heart. Are you a McCready fan? I mean, that's just usually what I always ask. So anyway.
All else fails.
That's
One of the Dan.
I hadn't mentioned his name in like a month. All right, so let's go back to kids because we got to end the show here so we can do our show.
Yeah, we started a little late.
Yes, you're right. We started a little late. So, Dr. B, do you think that schools should be delayed, and we can ask everybody in 30 seconds, in person until at least spring, which would match what the business community is doing? They're not allowing their employees, or most of them in the financial industry, to come back into the office until spring of 2021 so they can get through the flu season so they're not fighting 2 situations, the flu and COVID-19, because it's hard enough to fight one. And so they're protecting their human assets. They're protecting the human assets and saying, work from home, our game plan is to 2021. Do you believe that should be matched with the children?
Yeah, I'm not quite ready to go there. Like I say, I think watching the New York experiment here in the next few weeks might be very, very instructive. I don't have a magic date. Thank God I'm not in charge of this. I would definitely put it off several weeks, couple of months, just with the experience we've seen so far. This is so huge, and I don't think. I mean, I don't know if anybody. Well, there's a bunch of possible answers out there, so somebody's got the right answer, but I don't know that we know who that person is just yet. So I wouldn't make a flat-footed statement about put it off till spring of next year. That might be a little bit far.
Who wants to go next? 30 seconds or less.
I'll agree with Dr. B on that. I mean, one of the benefits of living in a republic like we have, you have 50 laboratories of democracy, so you can kind of see what's going on. So, there's so many unknowns. There are things that we don't even know we don't know, and kind of waiting to see, and, empowering local communities to make the prudent choices that they want is probably for the best, because we're all kind of muddying through this as best we can, and we don't really know. Hindsight is 20/20, as they say, but we don't have the benefit of hindsight right now. So take your time and empower people to make the choices that they want, and sometimes someone's going to make the right choice somewhere. We just don't know who that person is.
Jenny and then Mama Ruth.
Well, I do think one is, especially for the states that have not flattened the curve yet, they obviously can't even think about opening schools if they haven't flattened the curve. I think your school plan needs to, since they're little societies, they need to reflect the overall society that you're in. So if you're, say, in Dallas, Texas, or in Texas, which is one of the high infection rates, they shouldn't have in-person schools because obviously you're just going to bring that into another closed-in space. For New York, for example, that's finally flattened the curve and even starting to get the curve go downhill a little bit. They saw it as an opportunity and put forth a plan and worked for the last 5 months, putting in a plan to, especially for New York City schools, the largest school district in the United States, to put in a safety plan. We'll see if they can do it. But they have been successful in flattening the curve, especially in New York City that had Italy type numbers at one time. And so I think it does have the part where I agree with Stephen is you have 50 states, and we have 50 states with 50 different conditions. And so I do think what would work for South Dakota, for example, that has, at least before Sturgis, has had some of the lowest infection rates in the United States. It is very rural versus a big state like a California, a Texas, or a Florida that has large population centers and have struggled to contain this. Those communities have to probably refrain from doing in-person school for quite a while until they flatten the curve, obviously.
Okay. I mean, those are, I mean, I would agree with all of you. I believe the decisions should be local. I guess maybe I should have prefaced that. I was talking about CMS. It's obvious. To me, it seems like CMS, with the 15th largest school district in America, and they still operate like they're Mayberry. It's shut, and that, but that's like Charlotte Mecklenburg. If we have found that they operate, the skill set, we hire people who don't seem to not have big city, big school district experiences. And then when things like this happen, there's all these cluster situations. Give an example.
I don't think CMS is the only school
Oh, no,
guilty of that.
no, that's right. Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody's learning. I think because, like Stephen said, we don't have a hindsight on this. The United States has not dealt with something like this in a long time. And whatever we learned from the 1918 flu pandemic, we've completely forgot in 100 years.
Oh, that reminded me of something.
And so, I think we have to get a playbook in place. We have to get some ideas in place. I think on an overall national scale, but I also think we need to make it make sense for each intersection of our country as well. And if a state's done a really good job of managing COVID, then they should have some autonomy on that decision. I think for states that have let it get out of control, like Florida, Florida, for example, they shouldn't even think about in-person school there. I mean, it's just a dumpster fire there.
I was going to say, I'm a history buff. I always have been. And there apparently during the 1918 Spanish flu, there were also no maskers, and they were protest people who were against wearing masks. So the You're Not the Boss of Me crowd has been around since the 1918, and the majority of those no maskers were in Philadelphia. Does anybody know what happened?
Yes, indeed.
Go ahead, Dr. B.
The big march. Yeah, well, I had this huge march about the World War I, I'm sorry. And there was great debate, and the medical community was divided, and it ended up that they decided it would be politically better to kind of have a march, and then they had a huge outbreak after it.
Yeah, they had the big outbreak, and then the cities that did not have the big outbreak. And so I saw that on some article. Someone was talking about the 1918 and the no maskers, and how this is not really new. There's always been a percentage of Americans, and probably all around the world, where there are we call them, You're Not the Boss of Me people, but I understand there's different reasons why people have those beliefs. But the good news is,
it's kind of like there were a lot of women that opposed the suffrage, back when that came around too. So there were anti-suffragette women. It's like, okay.
Actually, that's really interesting too, because at the time suffrage was attached to the draft, and a lot of women didn't want to be drafted. So when they got rid of the draft, a lot of the anti-suffragette stuff went away.
Interesting.
It was a weird time back then. Super weird time.
Yeah, well,
times are always weird.
History is such an important thing, and unfortunately here in the United States, we don't always remember our history. We end up repeating it, which is why we all love reruns, because we just watch them over. All right, so we're going to end the show. This has been a great conversation. We haven't solved anything, but at least we're having the conversation. I hope that those who have children or have family members who have children do the best they can during this time period. Of course, I'm going to get emails from my nieces who have kids. It's easy for you to say, you don't have to take care of this kid. Well, I'm like, send them here. I got some grass to cut. This is put them to work. Our Mama Ruth with the 5 boys. You want one of these boys? Well,
I didn't think you were a fan of child labor.
Hey, I'm Hispanic. I'm Mexican American. No, I'm not.
It depends how we want to call it, okay?
No,
what are chores? For us, are chores. Cut the lawnmower, do your clothes, do the garage, take the dog's food, take them for a walk, things like that.
Listen,
not gonna do it.
Grown up,
No, gonna do it.
No one's roof got done unless all the kids came over. And I was like, why do we gotta carry the stuff? Why don't you do it?
Why not?
Yeah, that's right. All right.
Don't be
All right,
like
so that's-
Mama Ruth. I put my 12-year-old son to go and vacuum my car this past Tuesday, and he just went, did something real quick and came inside, and I'm over here like, wait a minute, this is not done. So I end up doing it.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's just Hispanics, but people who grew up in the country with a bunch of kids, that's the reason they had a bunch of kids, so they could have a lot of labor.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah, my last name ends in a vowel, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I was just trying to be funny.
Yeah, that was funny. All right, so Jenny's giving me the side eye.
Yes.
She's gonna get
And
it.
it's time.
So let's go around the Brady Bunch screen and tell us where you're going to be. We want to thank everyone for joining us. And then if you're on Zoom, stay on so we can thank you personally after the show. So we're going to go around the Brady Bunch screen, and that is, Dr. B.
Yeah, this afternoon, I'm going to go jump into a big rock quarry and go swimming and get a little fresh air. And the rest of the time, I'm going to be working on Medicare for All.
All right. Stephen.
I'll go next. I'm going to be at home. I'm writing some essays and speeches and stuff for my hobby in politics and the gubernatorial run for North Carolina. In particular, I'm going to be highlighting why our state certificate of need laws need to be reformed or abolished because they increase the cost of medical care in our state while reducing the access to medical care in our state.
Okay. Mama Ruth or Jenny, who wants to go next?
I don't care. I'll go.
Okay.
I'm not going very far. We'll be doing 2 queers in a truck here in a few minutes. And I wanted to say something to people that are around children. I think we need to change how we talk to one another. I think we need to be mindful of the language that we use, especially in front of children, because they're hearing some of the most divisive, ugly, name-calling stuff that I've ever seen in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to remember that and realize these are their formative years, and words mean things. And we need to not call our neighbors names. We need to be lower down the rhetoric. And especially in this political season where it's going to get worse and worse, we need to be mindful of how much we're scarring young children, young adults, people that are seeing us not do public discourse in the right way. So I really encourage people, everybody that's listening to this right now and will listen later on, maybe ice down some of our conversations, especially on Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that, and maybe not do so much name calling and that goodness.
Well, point taken. Let's see. I believe Baby Trump Pinata is. Baby Trump Pinata is probably going to be in the same spot that he was next week. And I want to thank everyone for joining us. I will say that there is. I did see the last couple of nights, and then we'll have tonight and tomorrow night for the DC convention. Then we'll have next week with the RNC convention. Kind of to piggyback on what Jenny said. Politics has become a tough thing, and I don't think it's ever going to go back to the way it used to be. America.
It's always been nasty.
Yes, no, I agree. It has always been
Always
nasty.
been nasty.
It seems worse because we have social media. But if you look at politics in other countries where they're punching each other and they're doing other, it's a sport, and for many people it has become a sport. Even for me, I will say that. The goal is to beat the opposition. That is the goal. But I will say one of the things that is very unique about America is our diversity. And watching the DNC and even watching the Libertarian Party, who's incredibly diverse as well, which is one of the things I find attractive about that party, and the Green Party as well. The diversity. Look at there is this ability for us to get through a rough game, a rough sport. Once we defeat Trump, we can get back together again. The family members that maybe we had not agreed with, the neighbors, the other people, at the end of the day, we have this natural need to hold each other and to come to each other. And I do believe that we can do it and we will do it. And I saw brief moments of that on yesterday when President Cheeto, who's what I call him, when he said at his rally that Fox News is fake news.
Where's the lie?
Yes, well, I know that, but he is now starting to attack Fox News as fake news. I have a lot of family members who watch Fox News. I know that they were grabbing their chanclas, about to throw it and say, "That's stupid, Trump." And I wanted to say, "Thank you, Trump." I needed something to bond with some of my family members. And now we both hate Trump. So not hate him, but we like other people better. So with that said, I want to thank everyone.
Plan B. If I mean, I know we're hoping and we're expecting for him to be defeated, but do we have a plan B? Or how is the country gonna be if he wins? What are we gonna end up doing? How are we gonna get together and get closer to resist in having him another term?
I'm gonna let Jenny take that one because whatever I say is gonna be Secret Service may like.
We'll be knocking on your door.
So Jenny, go ahead.
And I have not said what I'm gonna be doing this weekend, so y'all better let me talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mama Ruth, and then Jenny can answer that.
Okay. This Saturday the 22nd at Little Rock Church, 401 North McDowell Street, there will be an event going on from 10 to 2, and it's free COVID testing. Plus, you'll get voter registration for free. We need to get people registered for voting, free masks and refreshments. And also, if you want to get and interact with our future elected officials, come out there, meet them, ask them questions, do the screening for y'all. That's this Saturday.
Where was that, Mama Ruth?
That is the free COVID-19 testing at Little Rock Church off of McDowell Street.
Yeah, Little Rock Amy. Okay.
Yep.
That's where the NAACP meets, and that's one of the big, wonderful churches here.
Correct.
So, Jenny, in 30 seconds, we have to end. Can you? What is our plan B? Or we can talk about it on the show after. What is our plan B?
I think life goes on whether Trump gets defeated or not. I mean, every election is the election, but in the grand scheme of things, you know, we are one country. We have to believe that democracy works, whether he wins or loses. We still have to go about and live our lives, and we still have to make the right decisions for future generations. We have to remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I watch the show next because I want to talk about how, as an LGBT person, I have benefited more, quite honestly, and Jenny and I are going to talk about this, and she may completely disagree. Financially, my family has done better under Republicans. And however, I have been happier under Democrats. And so there's a balance. And so we're going to talk about this afterwards because we do have a show, I think, in 2 weeks. And the show is called Republican Latinos, or Republican Latinx. Are they self-haters or are they, I forgot the title. So we want to know.
I have to agree with you, Cano, because this particular term, my financial situation has been way better than before. Don't ask me. I don't really know much about financially, but I can tell by my husband's trades, his work has picked up so much than before. You know, it could be Republicans. Everybody keeps on saying Republican. The economy is on hijack. I don't want to see it that way, but we have to be honest and accept that financially we're better.
So that's a great, we're going to talk about this from an LGBT standpoint. Maybe we can have a show from the Latinx community because 54% of people who identify themselves as Latinx vote Republican. 54%. And that's not including the people who don't check Latinx, who consider they're Latinx, but they consider themselves white. We don't know what their percentages are. All we know
need
is
to learn more about the voting as well, because I was told just by me being independent, my vote doesn't count. And that really sucks.
That's a lie. Your vote counts just
Okay.
as much as anybody else's does.
Thank you.
We do have to wrap up.
Okay, so everyone wave. We're going to end Zoom. And then, so stay on the call so we can thank you personally. So bye, y'all. We'll see you next week. We went over. Let's go this one.